Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Make a clear choice. Joshua 24 verses 14 and 15 says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Joshua was not speaking from the top of his head. He had a history that culminated in this very powerful declaration. Let us trace that journey. Joshua was always close to Moses from the early days of the journey from Egypt to Canaan. Moses had followed God's instructions and built a tent of meeting, something like a small chapel, and anyone inquiring of the Lord would go to the tent of the meeting, especially Moses. Moses' time with the Lord on those occasions was nothing short of exciting. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Exodus 33, verse 11. Joshua would be right there with Moses when he and God had their time together, and when those sessions were done, young Joshua would stay there by himself. Why would he? Later, Moses sent 12 spies to gather intel about Canaan, Joshua being one of them. When the spies returned, 10 of them spoke of how prosperous the land was, but they could not go there because there were giants and these mighty men would destroy them. Joshua and Caleb, his friend, agreed that there were giants, but they believed the Israelites could go and capture the land, that God would make them victorious. Well, the people discarded the faith talk of Joshua and Caleb, and the outcome was that God was disappointed and sentenced the whole group of people to death in the wilderness. But only Joshua and Caleb, the only two who had left Egypt over the age of 20, would make it to the promised land. "Not one of you will enter the land I swore with uplifted hand to make your home, except Caleb and Joshua." Numbers 14 and verse 30. This was to continue for 40 years, during which time Joshua continued to serve as Moses' aide. As time went by, Moses was told by God that he would not enter the promised land because of a time when he disobeyed God. So the Lord said to Moses, "Take Joshua, a man in whom is the spirit of leadership, and lay your hand on him." Numbers 27 verse 18. Coming out of that, Moses officially commissioned Joshua to head the military unit, and Joshua did well in that capacity. After several years, still in the wilderness, when Moses turned 120 years old, he had a special event to formally appoint Joshua as his successor. In that ceremony, Moses publicly said to Joshua, "Be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you." Deuteronomy 31, 7-8. And then it happened. Moses died, and it was now time for Joshua to step into the position of leader of the children of Israel. He had the ominous task of leading them into the promised land after 40 years of Moses' leadership. By now, Joshua was over 60 years old, and on the day of inauguration, God said something to this brave leader. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1 verses 2 to 9. Joshua was a formidable military leader and successfully led the nation into the promised land. They fought gallantly under his leadership and defeated 31 kings and captured 31 cities in Canaan. He also managed the division of the land to the people according to the tribes they came from. Several years later, Joshua, now being an old man, was getting ready to retire. He was well aware of the challenge God's people face, especially when life is good, that there is a temptation to gravitate to other activities, such as to worship the gods of the people around. As God's people, we recognize that other lifestyles apart from God can be attractive, and we might even think that their life is better than us being Christians. The freedom to practice sexual activities outside of God's laws, the freedom to not go to church, the freedom to engage in idolatry, the freedom to try out different things that God says we should not. Joshua saw those possibilities then, and they are still with us today. But we have to make a choice. We cannot serve God on Sundays or at the beginning of the year, and then practice half Christianity mixed with worldly practices throughout the rest of time. It does not work like that. God demands full commitment from us. It might make us unpopular with the people around us, but the reality is that we have to make a choice. It is totally God or none at all. God will not be satisfied with sharing our attention and affection with Satan or with worldly pleasure. So we hear Joshua's words coming at us today. Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of the Amorites in whose land you're living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24 and verse 15. Let us make the right choice today. Let us choose to serve the Lord totally.